Welcome back, folks, to another episode of Charm City Heavyweights Podcast brought to you by Grade 8 Sports Memorabilia in Parkville, Maryland. I'm the host, Matt Trigger. With me, as always, Josh Merrill. What's going on, man?
What's up, Matt? Before I say anything, I want to say rest in peace to Ryan Mallett. That is a horrible tragedy. He's the same age as me. He was a Raven for a few years, man, so he's part of the Raven family, and that is just terrible, terrible.
Yes,
Too
yes, it
young.
is.
He had his own high school program. Apparently, he was coaching down there, and he was the head coach of and running, and that's sad, man.
It is. It is. And
welcome to the man cave. Welcome to the
there
man
you
cave,
go.
people.
There you go.
Matt tried to cut me off. He always tries to take my camera time.
You were fashionably late to every single show. I can cut and take whatever I want. Before we get started on the banter, before we get started on the banter, joining us from State College, PA, he is a Penn State analyst. He is involved in the college and high school sports world of Penn State. He is the former reporter at 105.7 The Fan, and he worked at the Baltimore Sun as a sports analyst for Baltimore Sports. Mr. Kyle and on Kyle.
Doing well. Glad to be back on. It's been a while, right?
It's been a little bit, yeah. Kyle was one of my guests on my solo show that I think it might have been around this time last year, maybe a little bit earlier, that Kyle was a guest. Kyle is a fellow Mount St. Joe's High School graduate like myself. Kyle, you're a class of 2012, I believe.
Yes, exactly.
So he is a fellow Mount man. Yes,
Holy
Kyle
shit.
is a young man. Yeah, Josh is
Hey,
class
dude,
of
I was
05.
a grown ass man in 2012, paying bills and shit.
Hey, I remember. It's funny because I think back to when I was graduating high school, and I was like, that was a momentous time too for baseball. Like with the Orioles, I remember I worked on the grounds crew back then.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was still at St. Joe. They went to the playoffs. I graduated at that point, and I was at McDaniel College. I used to drive like 45 minutes down to the stadium, or I try to hop on like the light. I try to drive down to the light rail, get on the light rail, and then some days I couldn't make it down there. I had to drive all the way down to the stadium, and I remember that first playoff game that they won at home against the Yankees in 2012. That was a crazy time. I mean, the whole city erupted. It felt like the weight was lifted off the Orioles' shoulder. But I got a lot of great sports memories from Baltimore for sure. I definitely a little homesick sometimes just because I know some great things to talk about down there. And definitely miss the people, miss the food. That's the big thing.
Yeah, nobody has crab cakes like here, man, or crabs. I don't care where you go; it's not the same.
Yeah, the Central Pennsylvania food. I love people up here, but it can't hold a candle to good seafood in Baltimore. That's a big thing.
When you talk about where you were for the 2012 playoff game and working down there, I remember I was sitting in the Green Turtle in Hunt Valley before. I think it's up there. I think it's a different name now, but I remember sitting in the bar. It was like a week before I got married. I was with a couple of friends, and the place just went absolutely nuts. It was electric, and then 2014 came around, and then it was back to the pit of misery for a decade, and here we are, almost a decade later, honestly, and the Orioles are back on track. They're these young guys are really starting to show some moxie. Jordan Westberg is finally here. He got here yesterday. He
looks the part, man. He looks like a big leaguer.
He does. He really does.
And he has that gaze in his eyes like Adley had, man, where you can just see. And I'm not predicting nothing crazy. It's only a second day, and now they're in a damn rain delay. But you can see that gaze in his eyes, the same that Adley had, where the moment doesn't seem too big. He doesn't seem freaked out. Last night was one of the. I've never seen that in a major league game, man. He literally had like 50 friends there, all wearing his T-shirt, going nuts. And he walked and they went nuts his first at bat. And but he was calm, man. He was broke the ball tonight before the rain delay. So I'm excited, man.
And
who do we trade? That's the thing, man. Who the hell do you trade?
At this point, it looks like Mateo might go.
Yeah, fuck him. I'm done with him. But I will say, being at the game, I was at the middle game of the Seattle series. Watch it. There's a couple of things that impressed me. Number one, seeing Mateo's speed that close is impressive. He's definitely a 4.2 guy. I got to Google that. Somebody Google that in the comments. The second thing, how big the tower is. That dude, Batista, is a fucking monster.
Yeah,
I don't care how much. Dude, I would never get in the batter's box. I played baseball. I played in a couple high-level tournaments here and there. I wouldn't get in the batter's box against that dude. Hell no. If he misses, you're dead. A couple of his pitches, I didn't even see the ball. You just hear Adley's glove pop. And then the other thing was Cano's size. That dude could be a defensive end in the NFL, no problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think Cano's 6'4".
Yeah, he's a big dude, man.
Yeah,
he's a big dude.
Batista's every bit of 6'8", 6'9".
Yeah,
they're monsters,
big
bro.
guys. Big guys.
They're monsters,
I'm
and
like
they whip the ball.
7. And these
you are?
Yeah, I'm 6'7", and these dudes make me look like pips. Well, I mean, I would say Felix Bautista makes me look like a pipsqueak. Cano was a big dude too, but watching Bautista, that first I want to say the first time I watched him was last year in person, and I'm like, geez, this guy, he literally is a mountain. Like that's a giant man, for sure. And if I'm not mistaken, yesterday, or I think it was on Sunday, one of his pitches in that last at bat went 103.5 miles per hour on
That's insane.
Ridiculous.
Crazy.
That's insane. How do you even hit that? You have no chance to hit. It's got to be like a 1% chance. It's got to be something crazy to hit that.
I don't even think it's 1%.
It's
like
luck.
less than 1.
You'd have to get lucky. I mean,
and it's not flat. It's got movement. It has late break on it. No matter what he's
weird.
throwing.
Yeah, it whips, man.
And his splitter is just out of this world.
I always say when his splitter is working, when his splitter is working, and especially when the slider is decent, he's unhittable. You can't hit him. Now, if his slider, that's his problem. If his slider or his splitter are off and he can't get him over the plate for strikes, then he's in trouble because then, guys will time up your fastball, unfortunately. But for the most part, those pitches are working, and he's one of the best closers in baseball. Both of them guys were junk signings no one gave two shits about. And they're two of our best pieces in the bullpen. Both of them were teams trash that we got for nothing. They're making nothing.
I was listening to the fan on the way home, and they brought up a good point that every player in every pitcher in the rotation and our two best relievers, they're all Rule 5 and waiver wire scrap heap signings with the exception of Kyle Gibson, who was a free agent. Yeah. That everybody else that we have in the rotation and in the back end of the bullpen are waiver wire and Rule 5 guys, which is insane. It's insane to think about that. Tyler Wells was a Rule 5 guy. Kramer was I believe Rule 5 guy. I don't think Kramer came through the.
Kramer actually came from the Manny Machado trade.
Yeah, he's the only guy left.
Yeah,
right. Yeah,
because you remember Zach Pop, Breivik,
stupid ass trade.
Yeah, I couldn't stand it when they made it. I thought
because we waited too long.
Yeah, they should have waited. They should have traded them during the offseason, in my opinion. If they were going to do it, trade them during the offseason, just blow the team up, and they could have gotten Walker Buehler. You would have, if you had a full year control for Manny.
They wanted Dustin Mays, and they didn't like his medicals, and now that dude is absolutely filthy.
Yeah,
he throws 100, 101, and his stuff. I think last week I sent Josh the video, Kyle. I sent it to him on Facebook, but he had a slider that had 19 inches of break. A 19-inch break on a slider. That's absolutely phenomenal. And every time I see that curly, red-headed dude, hit the fucking mound for the Dodgers. I'm like, he should be a goddamn Oriole. There's no way in hell that him
one
and
of the worst
Bueller.
trades in history. Man.
It's shitty, but
because we waited until we had no leverage. We waited to have the other team had leverage, and we had because we had to get rid of him. We had to get something. He panicked.
Does it not feel a lot like the Bradley Beal trade? You know, that's the way I look at it. I'm like the Manny Machado trade and the Bradley Beal trade are almost one and the same. The only difference is that with Beal is that the Wizards were still able to get Jordan Poole, whereas with Manny Machado they got
nothing.
Kramer,
and
he's just not. He's not to the same level as you expected him to be, especially going into this offseason. I thought he was going to be one of the better Orioles pitchers.
A lot of people did.
Yeah, I mean, and if you look at like some of my earlier stuff this season, I wrote a couple preseason articles. Thought he was going to be the team Cy Young. The team Cy Young guy, and that just wasn't the case. He's been at a 4.50 ERA. I don't understand exactly. I mean, he had a good start yesterday, but it's also like I don't know. It's just not up to par.
It's not. He's not what he was expected to be. Let me ask you guys a question now. I'm curious about something. And this is not Oriole fever. Well, maybe it is. Have you guys ever in any sport see a GM start off this hot? I mean, we don't forget Elias is a rookie GM. Everybody thinks he was a GM in Houston, but he wasn't. He was the head of scouting, right? Or assistant GM, whatever he was. I mean, so he was a rookie, and he has literally nailed every draft, every pick, everything. Every Rule 5, like Matt just said, every free agent works somehow for the most part. I mean, it's crazy. I've never seen a GM that hot for that many years in a row, knock on wood.
It's crazy. Because I don't think he's really missed on anything yet.
He hasn't, knock on wood.
Now, do you consider CNL Perez a miss?
Not necessarily, because
I don't think so.
For nothing.
You got him for nothing, yeah. It was a low.
And he was good early on when they first had him. I mean, that's a big thing. I think about, the Orioles just being they really overhauled the analytics department. That's something that we talked about before the show started. And I feel like that's really helped guys. I mean, you got Austin Voth last season from the Nationals for literally, you claimed him off of waivers, if I'm not mistaken. And then you turn this guy into a serviceable pitcher, at least for last season. You got him for nothing. The Orioles, Austin Voth was very important for the Orioles last season. Now, this season, not so much, but other guys have stepped up. Like Yennier Cano, out of nowhere, he was a Minnesota guy last year. You got him in the, I think it was the Jorge Lopez trade. He was just a throw-in the Jorge Lopez trade, and he's been outstanding. Felix Bautista, like I said, out of nowhere. He was if I'm not mistaken, the Marlins had him first. Yeah, in rookie ball with the Marlins from like 2013 when he was like 16 years old, 17 years old or something. Look at all these other players that they got. You mentioned CNL Perez. I think Colombe. Who was from he was from Minnesota as well. I mean, in Minnesota, they've produced some very decent pitchers for the Orioles. I mean, you got two of them in the bullpen right now, and both of them, Yennier Cano is better than Jorge Lopez at this moment, if I'm not mistaken.
At this moment, yes.
This moment, yeah.
And which is, that's just bullpen. Bullpens, they could blow up at any moment. One year we saw, how many times did we see Jim Johnson shut the door? Jim Johnson was all world for, a couple seasons, and then all of a sudden he just wasn't himself. Then you had Tommy Hunter start out, who was throwing gas at the beginning of the 2014 season, and then Zach Britton, who was the long reliever, ends up being,
the guy.
Yeah, literally the best closer in the game at that point. So it's impressive. Bullpenning is a very delicate part of the game that, I don't think people take enough into account. Orioles fans know as a middle relief is pretty bad, but once Dylan Tate gets healthy and maybe Michael Givens gets healthy, that'll be shored up a little bit if they ever do this season.
Yeah. Speaking of Zach Britton, I wanted to run this by you, Kyle. Josh and I talked about it on our show last week. DL Hall gives us Britton vibes.
Yeah,
A little bit.
that's honestly interesting because I look at DL Hall and as a starter, he actually throws significantly harder than Britton did as
Yeah.
a starter. And I'm like, if he can quell that, if he can just, hone that in as a reliever and he could just haul back and throw 101. And then he comes at he kind of reminds me of Josh Hader too. That's another guy that I think
Yep.
that's my big comparison because like Josh Hader is actually a guy I played travel ball against. He was the same age as me. He went to Old Mill. He was he was 80. He was throwing 88 in high school. Like he was not the Josh Hader that we see today, but he had that wipeout slider that he has now, back in high school. And I look at DL Hall and I'm like, if he was a fastball slider guy as a lefty, he's throwing 101 or he's throwing sinkers. I mean, this guy can be a dominant reliever. But it's all about control. If you can make that happen within the strike zone, you're perfect. But I just think that that's going to take some time. I don't know if he. I mean, they sent him down to I think the Florida complex so he could lift a little bit more. That was kind of what the word was. But I think he's a guy that he could be a devastating reliever for the Orioles down the line. So I agree with that notion.
And a lot of people get frustrated by it because he was such a high draft pick, and you don't waste high draft picks on relief pitchers. You find them in the mid to late rounds or as undrafted free agents. But
Unless you're the Washington Nationals drafting Drew Storen in the first round. I don't know if you guys remember that.
yeah, I remember
Yeah.
that. Yeah, but DL, if he could, like you said, if DL can rein it in, to me, DL is the perfect seventh inning guy that bridges the starter to Cano and Batista. And if Cano and Batista are both on, if you have somebody that can just get a guaranteed solid, like Andrew Miller back in the mid 2010s when we had Andrew Miller. If you have, I'm not saying he's going to be Andrew Miller because during that time Andrew Miller was absolutely filth. That was the dude. The dude was throwing high 90s, and he had a crazy slider like we've been talking about, and he just had
That was also why
that
we had him,
wonky.
man.
Yeah, but I believe that DL can be that kind of guy. He just needs to hone in on the control aspect of his game. It's cool that you can throw high 90s, but if you can't control it, you're worthless to the front, to the front end of the rotation, and you're worthless to the bullpen at that point.
Yeah.
So you're
Look,
gonna,
he has the talent, man. He's it's got to be, it's the moment too big. When you're out there on a big league mound, cameras everywhere, whatever, it's the moment. He has the talent to do it. I mean, that's no
he
question.
definitely does. He
He
definitely
wouldn't be
has the
where
talent.
he is right now, and his name wouldn't be what his name is if he didn't. It's just, can he settle down and get that calmness about him? Like guys like Adley come up, and it's just they settle in.
Yeah, and it seems like with the Orioles, it's harder for them to develop pitching. I mean, it's,
Oh,
it's a very
it's been
similar
like that
thing.
forever.
Yeah, it's been like that for literally as long as I've been. When I first moved to Baltimore as a little kid,
Yeah.
I remember the Orioles were like that. I mean, but they also had Musina back then. So I mean, hey, look, that if they could ever get a guy like that again, I mean, they're set. But the only key is that they got to keep them. Now, in terms of the way that they develop now, is like you see the Houston Astros style of development where you're developing hitters and you're trying to get them under control. Hitting's more of a easier commodity to prove, whereas I feel like pitching is tough because pitching is mostly feel. I feel like hitting is like you either got it or you don't. Whereas pitching is so feel. One day you could be outstanding and the next day you're terrible. I mean, hitting is a little streaky too, but it's not to the same extent. It's more of, you got it and you can figure it out and you could track it a lot easier. I mean, I talked about this before too with, the Orioles using K-Vest technology to, track their hitting. And they use Rapsodo and they use things like that to understand where pitch tracking is coming from and how to hit certain pitches and how to swing in their, swing selection is a lot better than what it was. That's stuff that the Houston Astros actually used when Mike Elias was down there. And I think when you use technology like that and use it to your advantage, I think that's why the Orioles are in the situation that they're in now. I think that they have it because they have proven commodities. They have that Houston Astros style of thinking, or the St. Louis Cardinals style of thinking, where I'm going to build my hitters. I'm going to have a bevy of minor league guys, and then I'm going to flip them for an established pitcher. And it's the whole. You remember Andy McPhail said he wanted to buy the arms, build the bats. Or I guess build the arms, buy the bats. The Orioles are now doing it the opposite way, where they're building the bats and then they're buying the arms, or they're trading for the arms. And I think that's a pretty cool idea on their end. It's working a lot better, I can see, and it seems like it's giving them a more stable outcome.
Speaking of the arms, is Grayson Rodriguez giving you concern yet?
Not quite, because he's still young. He's still it's the same way I feel about DL Hall. I think that Gray Rod is a guy that, he's gonna be able to figure his stuff out. He's 23 years old. That's the big thing. I think people have to give him a chance. He's been down in the minors throwing pretty well. That's the other thing too. In the majors, he's struggling, and that's a little bit of a cause for concern. But in the minors, he's got that one thing where he's like, okay, I can overpower guys, but he's still learning how to pitch. He's 23 years old. He's been in the system since he was 18, 19 years old. He's still learning the feel for the game, and as time goes on, he'll only get better. This is a guy that, he played against some of the top talent at every step of the minors, and he's still getting there. He's still trying to figure out his feel for his fastball, his feel for his changeup. This is a guy that has overpowering stuff. He can reach the 100-mile-an-hour mark. He has good movement. He has plus stuff. If I'm not mistaken, I know Eno Saris from The Athletic, he wrote a story at the beginning of the season saying that, Grayson Rodriguez had some of the best stuff out of all the prospects, if not the best stuff out of all the prospects, and some of the best stuff in the majors, even though he's barely touched the majors. And that was before, I think, if I'm not mistaken, that was before he actually made his major league debut. So we're talking about a guy who has plus stuff. He can, when he does pitch well and he pounds the zone, what he was doing in the beginning of the season, he was just getting crushed because it was just, even though he was pounding his zone, he was missing spots. And I think once he learns how to touch those spots, and once he learns how to actually, get that feel for his pitching back, which is, little small things, it's all going to work itself out on his end.
I agree with you. I just wish they would have let him kind of work through his kinks at the major league level. Even if you take him out of the rotation and you make him the long guy and let him get some consistent, I truly believe that sending him down might have been the right move at the time. But when you think about it in retrospect, Kyle and Josh, I know we've talked about this for a long time now that he's been back down. If it's between the ears, you got to let him work it out.
Yeah, and I agree with that, but also understand that, he's so young, you don't want him to mind fuck himself either. So they didn't want him to lose his confidence. I think that's honestly why they sent him back down. You could see he was struggling. He wasn't confident, his last few starts before he went back. The spot did look a little big for him. I'm not really worried. Now next year is when I'm going to really start to expect, him to start to look like what we've been hearing for all these years. This year, he's still feeling it out, but next year, he'll be 24. Come on, it's time to get going. If not, he would be a monster fucking closer, though.
Yeah, but we don't need a monster closer right now.
I know. We need an ace. He needs to be the ace like he's supposed to be.
That's the exact opposite of what we need. We got a monster closer. We got a monster relief setup man.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm not worried though. I mean, he's a kid. He's a kid. He's a kid. And you got to remember, we talk about this all the time in all sports. He's been the best his entire life. He was the best when he was probably 6 playing Little League. He was the best in high school. And then, he's the best in the minors, best. And then you get up to the big leagues and every guy coming up the bat is good.
He's a bona fide major league hitter.
Is a bona fide major, is very good. And he will take your shit to Utah Street really easy if you fuck up. Like, and that's like you were saying, you got to learn to hit your spots and he'll learn that.
It's
a big adjustment, man.
He still strikes guys out at a high level at 11. What is it, 11.12? Yeah. I mean, that's insane. You got 11.12 strikes per 9.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, look, that could play anywhere. You just got to be like we said earlier. You just got to
relax.
Yeah.
Find your spots, relax. And it's not just that these guys have super talented hitters. They are. It's also now they got all this analytics stuff, like you were just talking about, all this shit to analyze you that's telling them how to beat you. I mean, I understand he has the same thing, how to beat them, but he's gonna be fine, man.
I do
Elias
worry.
Don't make bad picks, bud.
I understand that, and I wanted to kind of circle back to something we were talking about earlier, guys. Josh brought it up when we talked about the promotion of Jordan Westberg. At this point, we know what we are. We're a playoff contending team. We are on the cusp of that upper echelon. If you were to end the regular season right now, we are a playoff team. We're going to be battling the Rays all the way down the stretch until the very end. We're either getting a wild card or the AL East. That's at least my personal thought process. It's going to be a long summer, but we need to reinforce. We need reinforcements coming along, Kyle. And Josh and I talk about this a lot. We know Means he's coming back. We might be after the All-Star break. It might be a little bit into August, but you got John Means coming back for the stretch run of the regular season into the postseason. You need to add another arm somewhere. We don't know where it's going to come from. The usual suspects. Everybody's still kind of in the thick of it right now. I think in the next week or two, you'll start to see the teams that are really going to separate who's going to be in contention come the deadline and who's going to be selling come the deadline. I've been keeping my eye.
Going to get fired there soon. Poor Buck.
Yeah.
God, what's going on, Buck? He can't do anything right up there, man. They're fucking eating him alive in New York.
Well, New York is a tough market to be.
It really is.
They're calling, acting like he's dumb and saying he's not playing. They're talking about on a fan today, saying he's not, playing enough young guys, and it's like he's sticking with older guys that he may have.
They got an old roster though. They got one of the older rosters in the National League.
But it's also one of the highest. What is it? The highest payroll in baseball, or one of them?
It's one of them. It's top 5 payroll. But getting back to the topic is, who do you move, and are you willing to move one of these guys that's knocking on the door? You can't move Hayes at this point. Hayes, at the beginning of the year, we thought that Hayes could be a potential trade chip if he was batting 240, 245. You could.
Yeah, I wanted Hayes gone.
Yeah, but now Hayes is, I believe he's still in the lead for the American League batting average. Mullins isn't going anywhere.
Nope.
No.
Santander, you can transition him to full-time first base, full-time DH. You're not going to take Gunnar out of the lineup every day now.
I love Santander, man. He's great.
Westberg looks like to be the everyday second baseman moving forward. Maybe give Frazier spot duty one day here or there, but it seems, by all accounts, it looks like Frazier's going to be the one that goes to the bench. But who do you move to get one of these arms? Kowser's knocking on the door.
Yeah.
Kerstad's knocking on the door. Isn't very far behind them. You got Joey Ortiz not getting everyday reps when he should be getting at least a couple games a week. You have all these guys that are ready to be major league contributors, or they should be up in the next year. And everybody isn't going to have a place on this team. There's a very good possibility that Ryan Mountcastle doesn't have a place on this team moving forward after the trade deadline. You
Yeah.
never know. I mean, you never know. He might be that major league ready bat that some teams want in return for one of their arms. Cleveland has gone on record saying that they want to acquire bats. Now, who do you package? Hypothetically speak, this is all hypothetical at this point. But say they want Mountcastle. What trade chip do you send to Cleveland to get a Shane Bieber to fortify your rotation at least for the rest of this year? Who do you pick?
So this is where I'm at with it. I definitely think Ryan Mountcastle would have to be a part of that, and I'm even thinking that Mateo would also have to be a part of that too. Just in terms of guys that I think, for instance, Gunnar Henderson should be the everyday starting shortstop. I mean, he's a better defensive shortstop than he is a third baseman. Urias has he has a Gold Glove. He's a very above average third baseman. He could play multiple positions, but third is clearly his best position. You definitely want to get guys that can play. You want a guy that can back him up at third, but I like him defensively best at third. First is one of those positions, like we said, Santander could play first every day and it wouldn't hurt because that also keeps DH flexible. You can move guys in and out there. Ryan O'Hearn could play first. Santander could play first. Adley in a spurt could play first if you need him to. Second base, I think Jordan Westberg's your guy, personally. If you feel like Jordan Westberg is this outstanding hitter and he can be this outstanding hitter, he has to be a guy at second base. And I think he's already shown that his batting eye is outstanding. And at in the minor league level, it got better and better. This was a guy that was, just mashing the ball down in the minors. This dude had he had a 939 OPS down in the minors. He was doing everything you needed him to do. Has a good eye at the plate. Plate discipline's high. So he's definitely a guy that started. And that's why I'd start him infield right there. Adley's a catcher, obviously. And then Mullins at center, Hayes at left, and then right field is kind of, you can put a better right fielder out there than Santander defensively, but we'll see. Now I'm not trading Colton Cowser in that.
No.
He's getting held on to no matter what because I think he is the right fielder or the center fielder of the future, whatever you want to put him at. I personally think he's going to be playing right field for the Orioles probably one day soon in the next couple of weeks. Really, I think he's ready. Just as Westberg was. I just think it's kind of a slow burn with them. And like I said, with Mateo's expendable. Ryan Mountcastle is expendable at this point. And I think minor league wise, maybe Joey Ortiz, he doesn't. Joey Ortiz was not a bat first guy. This was he has great hands as a shortstop. But I think he's a movable guy because you definitely don't know what he can be. And so in that situation, those three are definitely at the top of my list of guys that I would move for that. I really like, I wonder for the Orioles if, I know a lot of people, this is my thing. Marcus Stroman is a very controversial guy. Not necessarily, I don't know how that would play in the locker room, just considering, some controversies that he's had over the past couple of months with I think he said a couple of anti-Semitic things on Twitter, if I'm not mistaken. But he would also be a guy that I wonder if the Orioles will look at, just in terms of, his ERA is ridiculous right now. He has a 2.47 ERA, but he also only has 1 year. This is his last year left on his deal. You could probably get him for a little bit cheaper. I think that's another thing that might be considered too. Like, I wonder if he's a guy that, who has that AL East experience. He's on an expiring deal. He's a guy that, you could probably hand the ball off to every fifth day. I wonder if they go in that direction because they have that familiarity with him in the division.
I'm not opposed to Stroman. Like I think they would really have to seriously consider the what it would do to the chemistry and how your player. I think you really need to get the pulse of what the team would think adding somebody like him before you go ahead and do it. Now I understand that they're just players, and I'm not minimalizing that either. But you really got to like kind of not mess with the chemistry. This is a very energetic, outgoing, positive baseball team. You can see their charisma. You can see
they're young, man. They're
their
kids.
heart for the game. They're all kids.
Yeah.
But Stroman makes sense if you want to go the cheaper option. I don't think Stroman makes you have to deal Mateo, Mountcastle, and Ortiz.
Exactly.
I think you can get away with one of the major leaguers and Ortiz.
Exactly, and
I think you can hold on to one of them, and it all depends on who they want. Who they would want more. More would be, do they want a shortstop that's got plus speed, or do you want a power hitting first baseman that just needs the find? And it's so hard because or do you want to sacrifice all of them and then go get yourself somebody like a Giolito or a Dylan Cease or a Shane Bieber or, I don't right now. I don't think the Brewers are. I think they still believe they're in it, so I don't think they're going to deal Corbin Burns right now. Now maybe 2 days before the deadline on July 29th. They might start fielding calls if they're out of it, Kyle. You know what I'm saying? But
absolutely,
I don't think they're going to deal Burns immediately. So I wanted to kind of circle back to a comment you made, Kyle. You believe Gunner's a better shortstop than a third baseman. So when Jackson Holliday is ready for the majors, which I'm the more I see of the kid, the more I believe he is on the opening day
Dude
roster.
is flying from no way, not next year.
Maybe not opening day roster just because of.
I believe it. I think they're going to kick this rebuild to the wayside.
Matt, that's fucking rainbows and unicorns, bro. Ain't no fucking way.
I think it's a fair thought if it wasn't this organization, because we know what they do with prospects. We know that they're gonna wait till July 1st. They don't want.
It don't matter how ready he is. As soon as he's up, the clock starts ticking.
Yep, they're gonna wait. They want that extra year service time. That's my thought process. Now I could be wrong. I could be wrong because look at Grayson Rodriguez. They brought him up pretty early on in the season. They used up his service time.
Go back.
You never know. Exactly.
The longer you keep him down there, the longer you have control.
Yep.
I understand that, but I believe that we're going to be in more of a win now. Let's go get this World Series mindset as opposed to, let's wait on him.
1 year removed from high school to the major leagues, man. That I know he's super talented, and I know he's roking it and killing it. But that's a lot to ask.
There's guys around the league that are doing what I'm talking about on other teams.
I know. I understand that.
I'm not going to get into that, Josh. But what I'm saying is, getting back so I don't lose my train of thought, if you keep Gunner at shortstop every day, do you move Jackson up as the second baseman and kick Westberg over to his natural position of third? Or do you make Gunner go back to third and have Jackson and Westberg up the middle and you have Henderson back on the hot corner? Because if you're talking about a first base prospect, which you don't really have any in the minors, I believe Kjerstad's probably going to be our first baseman of the future.
I'm right there with you. That's something that I don't think enough people talk about, is that Heston Kjerstad has played a little bit of first base. I think that's where they're planning on moving him to. He's a left-handed bat, and Ryan Mountcastle is not a left-handed bat. He's playing first right now.
Can we all agree he's not the guy of the future, the first baseman of the future?
I don't think, and I hate to say that because I think
Mountcastle
is a very talented guy. I just don't know if it's going to work with him in Baltimore, just because of the number one is the left field wall is screwing him. It truly is. It's not helping him out by any means, and then not to mention, like, he has, if I'm not mistaken, he has vertigo right now.
Oh yeah, that's
and,
terrible.
And that's awful. I can only imagine. I've seen people go down with that, and I feel for him, but I just think he's in a tough spot right now, and I don't think it'll get any better at Camden Yards because it's that left field wall is really hurting him.
It's a treacherous thing now.
Yeah, and if you're a lefty bat, I mean the Orioles. I think the plan is like unless that right-handed bat's a monster, like Austin Hayes has proven that he can play. It does not matter where he plays at, he's gonna ball out. He's a great hitter, but you don't have guys like that in the minors that are right-handed bats. It's a reason why they keep drafting these left-handed bats. Heston Kjerstad is, to me, like I said, the guy. It's going to be less stressful on him. I mean, we all know he had the heart issue. I think playing first is, as a person that played first, I can tell you right now, way less running, way less on your heart. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that
was the fat man's position back in the day, man. First base was the fat dude. That was my spot.
Now it's all these like tall athletic guys. Like my favorite first baseman back in the day was Frank Thomas. I love Frank Thomas.
Hell yeah.
That was my guy, Big Hurt. But now with the Orioles, like I said, Heston Kjerstad, he to me is that guy because you got a ton of outfield prospects. You have Dylan Beavers, you have Judd Fabian, you have all these other Reed Trimble's another guy.
Mayo.
Mayo's also a third baseman. You could possibly, I mean, if you don't feel like he'll ever make it because you got all these shortstops that you can move around the diamond, maybe you move him. I mean, I think he could even play first too. He's another guy that I'm like, okay, do you move him from third to first? Or do you move Kjerstad from right field to first? I mean, you have options with this team.
I think Kjerstad's position is going to depend on whether or not they keep Cedric Mullins long term. If we cannot secure him past this season, I think that Cowser's our center fielder, and you could possibly keep Kjerstad in right field, and then that opens up first base. Now, if we sign Mullins to a long term deal, or we give him a short term extension, however, and we buy some time, I think Kjerstad's then you can move Cowser to right field, and Cowser could probably play all over the place in the outfield. I think all three of our outfielders are interchangeable anyway. I think Hayes, and I mean, he's got the best arm on the team, bar none, and best outfield arm on the team.
But he's like a right-handed. He's really like a right-handed, like Markakis. That's what he kind of reminds me of. He's like a right-handed Markakis, where you know that ball's coming in hot from the outfield. Like this guy is a cannon, but he is faster than Marquez. Like I look at him and I'm like, the speed's different, and I guess the approach at the plate.
Markakis wasn't fast. He just had a really good break on the ball, and he could read it off the bat very well.
I guess he's like a fully realized Nolan Reinhold. Like if Nolan Reinhold was healthy,
a blast from the past,
man. I look at him and I'm like,
I love Nolan Reinhold.
That's who Austin Hayes reminds. He's like a smaller, less injured Nolan Reinhold. And I was worried for Austin Hayes for his health early on in his career.
Yeah, that was his issue.
But he was the most talented outfielder in that whole the farm system at one point. It was him and Mullins, and now both of them are in the majors, and they're doing their thing right now. I mean, they're defensively some of the best two outfielders in the game, just manning that field. I mean, they've been impressive, but Hayes is that guy that I'm like, him and Mullins together. I don't know if you break that up. I don't think you should break that up. I mean, Mullins doesn't become a free agent until 2026. And by that point, you could just move him to a different position. You could move him to right field. Or if you want a man in left field, you could, but I'd prefer him in right field at Camden now, since right field's a little easier to play. And Hayes still has that arm. But, 3 years of control still. I don't think unless they get a huge return for Mullins, they're not moving him. I mean, you got all that control for him, and he's 28 years old. I say, hold on to him.
I was just thinking buy out his arbitration years.
Oh yeah, exactly.
That's what they need to do with Adley as well.
Yeah, well, I think Adley's the candidate. We talk about this a lot, Kyle. If looking at the two top prospects in the organization being, our two top guys is Adley and Gunner. Gunner's got Boris, so
Yeah,
we
he's a
know
Boris guy. He's probably not coming back if he unless
does, it's going to be a lot of money.
yeah, it'll be like 350 million at least because
If
he's a
he
young guy too.
Yeah, he's on the trajectory right now to be that, and then you got Adley, who's got a more team friendly agent. I think we can buy out his years and get him a Julio Rodriguez 2025 a year. I think he'd take that, and I think he'd be the centerpiece of the next 10 years of the Orioles. Not to we've had a lot of momentum talking about the Orioles right now, and we wanted to get your thoughts a little bit on the other team in town. They're currently in a lull right now, and we are just about a month away from the guys reporting to training camp, and there's some very high expectations coming in. The offense has been completely revamped from the coordinator down to the pass catchers. Other than Duvernay and Prochet, it is a completely different wide receiver room heading into camp. And you've got a couple cast off former first round picks. You got OBJ coming back from his ACL injury. What is your expectations heading into camp for this team?
I mean, number one, you got to be excited about. I think I've always been a person that's excited about offensive line. They had to replace Ben Powers at left guard. So I'm intrigued to see who wins that position battle. In terms of, you got another year Ronnie Stanley's back fully healthy, hopefully for the Ravens this season. He's a guy that I feel like steadies the ship at left tackle. He's been very good for a real long time now. I mean, he's been a guy that you can rely on when he's healthy, and he's one of the best left tackles in the league when healthy. That's just the key. I'm going to have to say that 500 times. He's just got to be healthy. Now, the Ravens also we got to remember, Charlie Kohler wasn't healthy last season. So now the Ravens, instead of just having two tight ends, and Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews, you got three tight ends. This is an offense where I feel like the Ravens are going to use their tight ends a lot still. They do have that offensive firepower with Zay Flowers, but and Odell Beckham, obviously. But I'm just looking at the Ravens, the way Todd Monken uses his tight end. He loves using his tight ends. When he was at Georgia, he used tight ends. When he was with the Browns, he used the tight ends. When he was with the Bucks, he used the tight ends. The Ravens tight ends are some of the best in the league as a unit. And so I'm thinking that Lamar's still going to hit his tight ends pretty heavily. It's just the question of how are they going to be used? Are we going to split Isaiah Likely out wide a lot more? Are we going to put him in line? Is Mark Andrews going to play all over the field a little bit? How's Odell going to line up? Are we going to see some, freak things with Duvernay playing out of the backfield possibly? How are they going to get the ball in the hands of? Are we going to see more screen passes to Zay Flowers? Because I look at Zay Flowers and a lot of people compare him to Hollywood, but he's a little bigger. He's a little bit bigger than Hollywood was when he first got in the league. When Hollywood got in the league, he was like 150 soaking wet. And that's no knock against Hollywood, but he was not a big guy. He was not more of a physical guy. And I look at Zay Flowers, and he's a little bit more physical of a receiver. He's just a little bit different. He's different. He goes across the middle. He'll take those hits, kind of akin to a former Ravens receiver who was a small guy but mighty, and Steve Smith, who was just willing to go across that middle and get blown up by safeties and middle linebackers alike. But I look at all those different things with the Ravens. They have, it's not the worst thing. If Nelson Aguilar is your fourth or fifth receiver, it's not the worst thing in the world. I'll say that. because I don't think he's the main. I mean, of course, if he's not the main guy, I'm not worried. But if he becomes the main guy, the Ravens have to worry. They have to keep these guys healthy. I think that's another thing. Steve Saunders is gone. Everybody should rejoice. He cannot get these guys injured anymore as a strength and conditioning.
God.
I don't know what he was doing. I don't know if the Ravens built their facility on a old Native American burial ground or something, but he had the team cursed. I don't know what that man was doing, but he was awful for them. And I mean, I think if they're healthy, sky's the limit for the offense. I mean, I think they could be better than. They have better talent than that 2019 offense. Let's be completely real. That 2019 offense did not have Odell Beckham, as he would by far, even a busted up Odell Beckham's better than any receiver that they had at that
Seth
point.
Roberts, Willie Snead.
Yeah, Marquise Hollywood. Yeah, Hollywood Brown, a young Hollywood Brown at that.
Rookie Hollywood, yeah.
And that's no knock against Hollywood, because Hollywood was good that season, but I still think that you don't have that team offensively, just talent wise, was not on a level of this team talent wise. I think that Linderbaum, to me, when I watch him in college too, as a center, he was one of the most overpowering guys as a center. You don't draft a center in the first round unless you think he's going to be a Hall of Famer. And I looked at this dude in college when he was playing against Penn State, and I see him manhandling PJ Mustipher, who is a mammoth of a human being. PJ Mustipher is 6'4", 320. Tyler Linderbaum's just sitting there wrestling with him and toying with him the whole time, and he's significantly smaller. Tyler Linderbaum's like 6'2", 290, but he's moving this guy around that's got him by 30, 40 pounds, and he's making a fool out of him. And I just think, to me, guys like that meanness, that toughness. Ravens had another Iowa offensive lineman, and Marshall Yonda, who was, just one of the toughest SOBs in the NFL, and also one of the nicest guys off the field. And I look at Linderbaum; he's cut from that same cloth. I'm really, really excited for them just to see what Daniel Falalele does. I also look at Morgan Moses being maybe. Maybe it's a competition at right tackle. Kevin Zeitler is back at right guard. Prayerfully, they don't use Patrick Ricard at fullback as much this season and try to run him on wheel routes. And that's no knock against Pat, because Project Pat's one of the toughest fullbacks in the league, but it's 2023. They don't need to be running at 3 yards in a cloud of dust offense. This is going to be way more play action offense and less rollouts out of a pistol. And I just think that's a way smarter type of offense to run in today's NFL, to spread things out and make things a little bit more dynamic. I think the Ravens were too congested last season. And then if we go on the defensive side, I mean, you definitely have it's a different looking Ravens defense. Marcus Peters isn't there anymore. Marcus Williams is healthy again. Kyle Hamilton has had a full year under his belt. I think that's going to be a lot better for him, because he struggled at certain points last season, but he is, in a lot better of a situation now. Just having that full year. Patrick Queen and Roquan Smith, definitely one of the better middle linebacking duos in the NFL. Tyus Belzer's healthy. Odafe's back, who I think he can have a breakout season.
Tell us about him, man. Hey, did you have any encounters with him since you're at Penn State? He's from Penn State.
Well, so I actually didn't, because I got the Penn State right after he got drafted by the Ravens. I actually interviewed him though when I got to Penn State, when I got to cover Penn State football for Center Daily Times. He was one of my first interviews. It was him and Trace McSorley.
Wow.
So yeah, he was very, very nice guy. I wonder too. I look at the Ravens, like David Ojabo is another guy. And I'm like, him and Odafe are pretty good friends, because they grew up in the same town. They went to the same high school, and played football there in Jersey. And I think Ojabo's he's healthy, full season. I mean, he has a full off season. I think that's,
and he packed on some muscle.
Yes, it's going to be outstanding for him. I think those two together, if they are in a lab together, and with Tyus Bowser and learning some more rush moves, I thought they would have brought back Justin Houston maybe, but those that wasn't in the cards. Calais Campbell being gone, I think that's going to be a little tough. So I expect the defense to take a slight step back, just because they don't have that depth at corner. They don't have that same veteran leadership, but they're younger, so they should be faster. That's the bright side of it all.
I've been saying this on the show recently, and Josh has been kind of on board, and he knows, Kyle, I'm a sucker for names. I always have been. I always will be. Clowney replaces Calais Campbell this year. Jadeveon Clowney is going to be a Raven. That's my prediction.
That'd be interesting. Interesting.
I think he comes in, takes on the Calais Campbell edge setting inside pass rush role. We're not going to ask him to be a 10 sack on the outside guy. But I think when it comes to interior pass rush, he's not as tall as Clowney, and he's not as tall as Calais, and he's not 315 pounds. He's around the 280, 275 range. But if you let him just anchor in and be the pass rush guy on that inside to mirror Matabike and spell Broderick Washington, and you got guys like Bowser and Ojabo and Owe on the edge, I think that's a better look than what we got now. And now I love Brent Urban, but he's not an everyday starter at this point in his career.
He's not.
He's a good depth. He's good energy off the bench, which is cool. He's a good rotational piece. I thought Broderick Washington was a good rotational piece until he balled out last year. Now I think he's the starting. I think he starts in place of Calais this year.
Yes.
So you're not going to bench Pierce if he's healthy, which I pray to God Pierce stays healthy this year, because that's going to really help the defense out a lot. But before we wrap the show, what is your bold prediction for the Ravens? Whether it's a signing, you don't need to tell record or anything. What do you think is? Just give your bold prediction for what's going to happen this time next month.
Come this time next month. I was actually going to give something further in the future, but come next month. I think that the Ravens.
No worries.
Oh yeah, you want me to give I'll give the next month one first, and then I'll give the secondary one. But this upcoming month, next month, I think that the Ravens. I think that Jadeveon Clowney, he's definitely within the realm of possibility. But I think that the Ravens sign another cornerback. I think that's the big move. You got to be afraid of cornerback if you're a Ravens fan. Like in 2014, we saw how much that hurt the Ravens not having that depth at corner, and they had to sign guys off the street. I mean, that's something that is going to continue to haunt Ravens fans forever, because I think that 2014 team was better than the Super Bowl team, personally. I think offensively they had it. Defensively, they didn't necessarily have it because the corners were as bad as they were. They had to get guys out of nowhere. And then in terms of the Ravens' future predictions, I think Lamar Jackson throws for 4,500 plus yards. I truly do.
Wow.
I think he has the weapons. He has a better offense that's going to protect him in terms of just being upright in the pocket. He doesn't have to run as much. He can run if needed be, but I think it's going to be more of a situation where, look, we want you to be a passing quarterback. He is a passer. I think this is a guy that was able to run, one of the toughest offenses in college football with Bobby Petrino at Louisville. But I think he's going to be that guy that continues to blossom as a passer. And I think we are going to see a very different Lamar Jackson with this receiving core that you didn't have in the past 5 years that he's been the quarterback with the Ravens.
Fair enough. Kyle, I want to thank you for taking some time out of your schedule to join us on the show. We have really appreciated you, joining us. Let everybody know, before we let you go, though, just stick around for some post-show in the studio. Let everybody know where they can find you on social media so they can follow you. let them know what you got going on up in State College.
So you can follow me at Kyle J Andrews _ on Twitter. I was verified back when verification meant something. Now it doesn't. So I'm not verified anymore. But I'm still doing sports stuff. Even though I work for the university now. I'm in marketing at Penn State. I love it up here. It's a great place to work. But I still write some. I'm still a journalist at heart. I'm still covering baseball. Still covering basketball. I actually do a podcast called the Capital Crossover Podcast. And you can follow us at the Capital Cross Pod or Capital Cross Pod on Twitter. If you're a Wizards fan, listen to it. I'm doing basketball stuff. Still talking about everything else in the NBA. We actually had an interview with Catherine Fomanique from the Capital Gazette where we talked about Cam Whitmore, local Odenton kid. Went to Archbishop Spalding, boo, because we're St. Joe guys here, but
they're awful.
Still all love to him though. Good luck to everything for Cam Whitmore. He's a good kid, but he's headed to Houston, and so just talked about that on the pod. Talked about the Wizards draft. Wizards have made a ton of big moves. Jordan Poole's on the Wizards now, so you like Wizards content? Listen to us. Capital Crossover Pod. Give us 5 stars if you like our stuff. If you don't like our stuff, still give us 5 stars. We need it.
Sounds good, man. Josh, let's do this. Oh, before we go, this morning I got it confirmed. I know that I made the Facebook announcement and on the Twitter as well. Tim Kirkjian from ESPN Baseball Tonight and Sports Center joins us Thursday night at 8 o'clock. Tim Kirkjian will be live on the Charm City Heavyweights podcast. So everybody, I hope you
maybe our biggest guest ever.
Hopefully the start of many.
Yeah.
Not to say that everybody else hasn't been, but Tim Kirkjian is a legend. He's from the DMV area, I believe Bethesda, Maryland, to be exact. And he's going to be on the show talking some Orioles baseball, and he's going to be talking about his new book. And that's a wrap. Josh, go ahead and sign us off, man.
All right, Baltimore
no
sports
cussing this time.
fans. I ain't going to cuss this time, Matt. We're just going to shut it down. I'm tired. Ravens are going to be good. Orioles are good. Maryland's good. Life is good. Shut it down.